in an ocean of flagship tier closed back headphones. This one in particular stands out as a bit of an oddity. Let's take a closer look and find out why. At a glance, this headphone appears to be largely conventional. The only two parts of this design I would describe as such are the double headband arches, which is a feature borrowed from the AKG K240 series, and the cable, because it's just a cable. Everything else is a bit different. The angled aluminium and plastic cup shape is borrowed slightly from its predecessor, the MDR-10. While it's not as strong an angle and also far less complex on the inside, it still serves a greater purpose than only simple aesthetics. As demonstrated by the R10 and more recently the Z1R, cup chamber design, especially asymmetrical and irregular types, have the benefit of dispersing resonances and reflections behind the driver and within the chamber that should create a cleaner sound and possibly a way to curate a sense of space or soundstage. The suspension strap is unlike any other before it. It has a unique one-size-fits-all design with spring-loaded ribbons on either side of the strap. This bit of engineering genius is nowhere near as clunky as one might imagine. It functions perfectly, it's comfortable, and does not apply too much or too little pressure on top of the head. My only complaint is the bulk of the mechanism. While it doesn't appear to add much extra weight, it does take away from the balance of the design. I believe this is also one of the earliest examples of a single-sided headband yoke. Not only was this a striking departure from conventional headphone aesthetics, it was also essential due to the angled cups, a great example of function and form coming together perfectly. And finally, most importantly, the ear pads are huge velour pillows. I personally struggle to think of a single other full-sized closed-back headphone with ear pads that were not made of some kind of non-porous material. I think understanding the decision to use a porous fabric is essential to unraveling the mystique behind this headphone. After removing the ear pads, we can see a large baffle with very large paper-covered vents and a less than attractive plastic acoustic lens. In this instance, the driver is not covered by any damping paper, but more on that later. Inside the headphone, filling most of the void behind the driver, is a thick piece of sponge foam, and on the back of the grille, we can get a good look at the asymmetrical biocellulose driver with its larger than average vent holes and magnet. Unfortunately, there is no way to get a better look at the driver as it is merged with the acoustic lens, so I'll just throw up some macro shots on the screen. Let's start backwards this time. I've been living with this headphone on and off for almost 4 years, so I have a very clear understanding of what this headphone is capable of. Here's a frequency response graph measured on the mini DSP ears. For more graphs, take a look at my database. It has hundreds of vintage headphones, modern headphones, and even some earpad alternatives. The link is in the description. The first obvious thing to note is the perfectly flat mid-range. The scoop around 3 and 4 kHz adds a larger sense of scale and staging. The treble only has a slight emphasis around 8 kHz, and while it is never forward or piercing, it is extremely well extended, especially for a closed back. The bass starts rolling off just below 100 Hz, and there is less than 10 decibels difference between 100 and 20 Hz, which is also just about what you can expect from a Sennheiser HD600. I'll just spoil the whole video right now. The CD 1700 is basically a closed-back HD600. Okay, technically it's a closed-back HD580 since the 600 didn't exist in 1996, but you get the concept. Also, like most Sony headphones from the past 30 to 40 years, these are sensitive and do not require a powerful amplifier. With that out of the way, let's focus on what makes these different. Forget about isolation. With velour pads, you're not going to keep the sound in, and you won't keep all ambient noise out. It certainly does a better job than any open-back headphone, so there's actually some merit to this. Bass is a little on the polite side. It's clearly fast and detailed, but lacks the full-bodiedness of not only regular closed backs, but even some open-back models. Cranking the bass up on my Fuzzy Audio SK01 yields good results. I won't say the results are excellent, because it's also possible to boost the mid-bass with this method, which is undesirable, but the Biocellulose driver is more than capable of receiving a solid bass boost without distorting or reaching its excursion limit and giving you something either close to neutral or full-bodied and warm. One, however, should not expect a solid, thunderous sub-bass performance as one would expect from, let's say, a modern Fostex Biocellulose driver. That is unfortunately beyond the technical ability of this 28-year-old headphone. Where this headphone does excel, however, is its clear, almost dry timbre. It does not have the same veiled treble as the HD600 series suffers from. On one hand, it presents sound in a clear, snappy way that is deceptively airy and articulate, not only for a closed back, but for any headphone type. And on the other, it's exactly that gentle clarity that invites you to turn the volume down a little and relax, because the driver is so wonderfully capable of effortlessly rendering detail and treble that you don't need to search far mentally to get the whole picture. This is a headphone that forces you to relax. Every aspect of this headphone works together in harmony. From the moment you put it on your head, you are encouraged to do less. You don't have to adjust the headband. The huge velour pads hug your head. The sound is crisp, but never fatiguing. Imaging is accurate, but not distracting. Absolutely nothing is exaggerated. But there's a problem. Actually, there are a few. I've measured 3 different copies of this headphone, and also seen online images of further different versions. And I don't just mean other CD1700s, I mean different production runs with slightly different materials and damping techniques. Remember that little bit of small print in the booklets or packaging that says, "Design and specifications are subject to change without notice"? This is exactly what we're talking about. To break it down simply, the main differences are observed in the paper damping material color, the driver magnet color, and the presence of damping in front of the driver. Out of the 3 different copies I've measured, one was clearly my favorite and arguably the superior version. I'm very lucky to say that it was my own copy. But now here's the problem. The only 2 ways to maybe know what version you're getting is either to take the earpads off and see the damping scheme, or have them measured, and even then, neither is a sure way to know if you're getting the best possible CD1700 that you can. Then of course there are other variables to consider, such as the age of the earpads. Flatter pads will change the sound further. I'm not saying don't get one. 2 of the copies I heard sounded excellent. It was actually only 1 out of the 3 I tried that had significantly less bass and absolutely required tone correction or EQ to sound its best, not just from a subjective point of view, but it objectively sounded much too thin. I'm just saying there's an element of gambling involved with this model. I hate to say it, but that's actually kind of a theme with a few notable Sony models, although each for various reasons, which I will go into when I review them in future. If you do manage to find a good one, you will be rewarded with one of the most unusual and surprisingly relaxed closed-back dynamic headphones ever made. I would personally recommend getting the EQ or tone correction ready for maximum enjoyment, but by no means is it a requirement. Take it easy, and I'll see you in the next one.